Hello. I am a survivor of domestic abuse while living overseas. I'm an American citizen, born and raised. I was in a 16-year abusive marriage, which is almost half of my adult life. I got married in my early 20s and was in love with a man that had promised me the world. However, when I moved to live and marry him, that promise soon gave way to a world of enduring culture hardships and interpersonal life altering trauma. My experience adjusting to a different culture, despite it having the same language as my native tongue, was a lot more difficult than I could ever imagine. This made me depend on my abuser a lot more than I ever wanted to, and often more than I needed to. Being a foreigner in any country is hard enough, but when one cannot count on the love of a partner that was promised, it makes it extremely much more difficult. I finally fled from my abuser and the toxic environment, returning to the United States. It was not until my return that I found Pathways to Safety International, a charity that helped me transition back to American life and gave me resources and the support I needed when others failed to do so or understand my situation. Pathways to Safety International has recently had their federal funding pulled, which means that their services that are highly important to the 9 million Americans living overseas, the 80 million Americans traveling overseas annually, and the 450,000 American military personnel and dependents overseas may be restricted, causing those Americans to use domestic abuse services, if there are any, in that country, which are often of no actual help or do not want to offer help because, well, you're American. We don't help you. Language barriers makes it finding help in other countries difficult. If one cannot speak the local language, then it is it is incredibly difficult to get what is happening to you across, to find someone that believes you. With Pathways to Safety International, there is a free international phone number that can be called to ask for help in English. Being able to speak English when one is already in a dire situation can start you on that pathway to getting out of that abusive situation overseas. Due to Pathways to Safety International's federal funding being pulled, it has encouraged me to create this channel and to talk about my experiences in short videos. I want to spread awareness to other Americans that are living overseas and that are in situations familiar to the one that I was in. I want to stress that since I have received help from Pathways to Safety International, that I am better now than I was. Um, Upon returning to the United States, my own mother um, did not understand how much my life had been altered because of the overabundance of complications that I endured when I was overseas. Domestic violence can happen to anyone, anywhere, um, and regardless of how one gets into a abusive relationship, it could be raised in an abusive family, abusive parents, or having a partner or a spouse uh, that is abusive. It is, oh, how can I say this? Um, in my experience as an American living overseas, I did not, I found it difficult to make friends. I found it difficult um, to adjust to an entirely different culture, even though the native language was English. Um, it was very difficult for me to be the outsider, be the foreigner, and be an American in the political climate that continues to deteriorate. It made it very very um, well. It was just insufferable, really. Um, and it was difficult to have. It was difficult to allow. It was sorry. It was difficult to. Okay, I'm going to start that sentence over. It was excruciating to try to get people to understand upon my return to the United States what happened to me, what I went through mentally, emotionally, um, physically, because of the amount of stress, the amount of gaslighting and isolation and everything just all dumped on me. Every day there was something. I was hyper vigilant. I lost myself over there. And and, and to have people here um tell me, well, just, it's over there and you're here. It doesn't work that way. Just because I fled that abuse doesn't mean that I am over it. Physically, yes, I am safe, but it I need to be able to talk about what happened to me, to have that support with those that understand, and Pathways to Safety International, they do. That is what their organization is founded upon, to help American citizens living or traveling overseas. Uh, with abusive interpersonal and gender based abuse and violence. And if it wasn't for Pathways to Safety International, uh, I would not have been able to survive the transition back to American life. Um, Coming back to America, not knowing what resources I could obtain, not knowing assistance that what kind of assistance I had access to, not knowing anything. Um, and so one day I was quite in a pit of despair, really just at a loss, and um, my mental health had deteriorated far worse uh, than I had ever experienced upon returning back. Um, and I sat down and I thought, I cannot be the only one. I cannot be the only American that moved to live overseas and was in a domestic abusive relationship. And there has to be something out there that I can find to help me seek out, resources upon my return. There has to be something. There has to be something. So I sat down at my computer and I did a Google search and I found Pathways to Safety International. And I wasn't confident of my voice to call, so I emailed. And the person who answered my email became my caseworker. And for the 2 years that I've been back in the States, she has helped me tremendously. She has helped me more than anyone else since I've been back in the States. She has reached out to local services. She has emailed me information on domestic abuse support groups where I could get um, therapy, um, which I do get therapy once a week for free, um, helping me with um, assistance, financial assistance locally, and giving me that moral support and listening to me. And most importantly, believe in me. And that is something that starts to shed light on that very, very dark abyss is having someone believe you. Because often victims of domestic abuse will have things to say that are difficult to hear. And when something becomes difficult to hear, that often leads the other person to not believe it. But so it was that belief of my Pathways to Safety international caseworker that helped me and that truly and honestly saved my life. And so these this channel is in tribute and to wait and to raise awareness for others that may be in the same situation that I was in overseas and in my transition um, back to American life. And so I will end this video, and please share this video uh, to those that may, well, just share this video um, because it's important that Americans living overseas in abusive situations, relationships, gender based violence are not alone. Thank you for listening.